Hello and welcome to this short video lesson on asbestos management. What is asbestos? Asbestos is a naturally occurring fibrous silicate mineral, all of which are composed of long and thin fibrous crystals, each fiber being composed of many microscopic fibrils that can be released into the atmosphere by abrasion and other processes. The three main forms of asbestos are the blue asbestos crucidolite, the brown asbestos amosite, and the white asbestos chrysotile. The blue asbestos fibers are so thin about the diameter of the strand of a hair. When airborne, these fibers can be inhaled easily and become lodged in the lining of the lungs. Exposure to amosite asbestos creates a higher risk of cancer in comparison with the other types of asbestos. White fibers are curly and are comprised of sheets of crystals. Exposure to chrysotile asbestos can cause a number of serious health conditions. Asbestos is incorporated into many building parts such as roofs, ceilings, walls and ceilings, floors, pipes, decorative plasters, insulation. It may also be found as asbestos rope or gaskets in old equipment such as furnaces, chemical pipework or boilers. Material that has asbestos incorporated into it is called ACM or asbestos containing material. In the late 19th century and earlier 20th century, asbestos was considered an ideal material for use in the construction industry. It was known to be an excellent fire retardant, to have high electrical resistance, and was inexpensive and easy to use. At this time, the health effects of asbestos were not very well known, and it was put in widespread industrial and domestic use. Now it is banned. There is a whole list of countries where asbestos is banned. Note that India has not yet banned asbestos. There are certain guidelines, but it is not really banned. But many of the advanced countries have banned the use of asbestos because of its health hazards. Asbestos in building. It can be found in various places, which we saw earlier: water tanks, ceiling tiles, bath panels, toilet seats, partition walls, asbestos cement pipes and roofs. It was used in various parts of the construction. Asbestos condition in the building is good if there are no fibers which are loose. If asbestos fibers in the material are not free to leave and form an airborne dust, then they can be labeled but left undisturbed. Bonded asbestos does not pose a hazard. If asbestos is properly bonded using a bonding material and there is no possibility of free fibers or dust, then it is relatively safe. What is acceptable? The ACM is damaged, but the asbestos fibers in the material are not free to leave and form an airborne dust. Then they can be encapsulated, covered and made safe, labeled and left in place. For example, an additional coat of paint or an epoxy layer may be put on top of the asbestos so that it doesn't get released in powder form or fiber form, and it can be kept in place. Asbestos condition in the building is classified as poor if the asbestos fibers are loose and can become airborne, or they're likely to be disturbed. Then they should be removed, because these loose fibers and asbestos dust is what poses the maximum health hazards. Hazards of asbestos: it can lead to lung issues like asbestosis, lung cancer, mesothelioma, and diffuse pleural thickening, that is, thickening of the lung walls. Asbestosis is caused by asbestos fibers lodged deep in the lungs and can cause scar tissue formation and damage the lungs. If enough of the lung is scarred, then severe breathing difficulties occur. It can prove fatal as well as increase the risk of cancer. Lung cancer: asbestos fibers in the lung trigger the development of cancerous growths in the lung tissue. Important point is that asbestos exposure and smoking act together to produce a huge risk of lung cancer. So smoking is an additional factor which increases the possibility of lung cancer through asbestos. Mesothelioma is a type of cancer that develops in the lining that covers the outer surface of some of the body's organs. It's usually linked to asbestos exposure. Mesothelioma mainly affects the lining of the lungs, which is known as pleural mesothelioma, although it can also affect the lining of the tummy, known as peritoneal mesothelioma, or heart or the male testicles also in some cases. Asbestos fibers inhaled into lungs work their way out to the pleura and may develop fibrosis or scarring. Diffuse pleural thickening extends over a large area and may restrict the expansion of the lungs, leading to breathlessness. Pleural plaques are localized areas of pleural thickening which usually do not interfere with breathing. What are the control measures for asbestos? First is survey. Identify the asbestos containing materials in any premises requires some form of survey. Samples have to be taken for analysis. Conducting a survey can be done in-house by competent people, but many instances must be done by an external competent surveyor certified for asbestos. Then identifying asbestos and potential asbestos containing material so that the location and condition is known. Providing information to anyone who is likely to work on or disturb the asbestos containing material, such as contractors working in an area where ACMs have been identified. The picture shows a roof made of asbestos and the workers are wearing full body PPEs. Asbestos containing material work must be performed by only licensed contractors. In UK, Asbestos Licensing Unit operates a permissioning regime that issues licenses to carry out licensable work with asbestos. Making and implementing an asbestos management plan to manage the risks from these materials. Assessing the risk of anyone being exposed to asbestos fibers from these materials. Replacement of the material with substances that can be used in the same way and have the same technical requirements but that are either less harmful or not harmful at all. Process separation, automation and enclosure if there are any process which can produce asbestos fibers. Provision of general and local ventilation to draw out any loose fibers or dust in the air. Separate workplaces for certain processes. Design of equipment, materials and process should be such that the possibility of exposing workers to asbestos dust is eliminated or reduced to the lowest practicable level. This again links up with the international ILO idea of as low as reasonably possible, ALARP. Local exhaust ventilation specifically designed to catch and remove dust-laden air should be provided and maintained. Suitable types of respiratory protective equipment must be selected based on the work. Air purifying respirators of negative pressure types or positive pressure respiratory equipment or direct airline breathing apparatus can be used. Where personal clothing may become contaminated with asbestos dust, the employer should provide appropriate work clothing. Protective clothing, including coverall, head cover, hand gloves, etc., must be used at all times. Cleaning of premises and plants. Employers should ensure, as far as is practicable, that the work premises are maintained in a clean state and are free of asbestos waste, asbestos fiber, and dust. What are the major areas of focus in the disposal of asbestos waste? Waste collection, initial packing of fibers, offcuts and broken pieces to be collected and or put in bags. Damaged loads and bags must be avoided. Proper warehousing of this hazardous material. Transport of the waste must be done carefully. Disposal of the waste only in legally allowed places. Personal protection and hygiene to be maintained at all points. Supervision by competent people who are trained in the disposal of asbestos. We hope you enjoyed this short lesson on asbestos management. Your feedback and comments are welcome. Thanks.